So guys, of course, both of these organizations are growing at a stellar level. So I don't think I can introduce them to the most updated numbers. I'd request Yad and Greg to take whatever time they need to introduce your respective company's latest information or whatever of that you want to use. Over to you.
Thank you very much. As I said, my name is Yad. I'm chairman and co-founder of Animoca Brands. So first of all, thank you very much for the intro. Very humbling. I would say there's a lot of people building in space. It's a community effort. In any regards, I feel like I'm really standing on the shoulders of the community that are helping build it up, which later on we can talk about why NFTs matter as a result. But Animoca Brands itself is probably well known for the fact that we have both built and invested in really the NFT ecosystem broadly back in 2017, 2018, starting with CryptoKitties. We were seed and early in companies like OpenSea. We acquired the Sandbox, Dapper Labs as part of a portfolio, Yuga Labs, Cool Cats, and actually some 450 plus companies that are within the ecosystem of Animoca Brands since inception. You can see some of our latest financials basically as a public company that we reported in our website. So the company basically is sitting on a strong cash position, billions of dollars basically in crypto assets, and billions of dollars basically in, I guess, equity in the space that we're basically building in the space. We're however not a publicly listed company, but we are a public company. We have over 2,700 shareholders, so that's also interesting. One of the reasons we can talk later about why we love the concept of DAOs is that we as an organization are probably as DAO-like as it can be for a public company. We only have one class of shares, for instance, no preference structures. Even myself, I don't have any supermajority in the company. So our shareholders could vote me out, right? If I do a bad job, as an example, right? So there's some elements around how we live and breathe the way that we believe in that future. The whole idea of digital property rights and how NFTs are critically important for us in the space. And we have, we're about 1,000 people worldwide today, and we really focus on the intersection of the importance of culture in Web3.
Amazing. Greg. Switch it on.
There's a button?
Oh, yeah, should be on.
Okay, good. Wow, that's very loud. Okay, so thank you very much for having me here. My name is Greg. I'm the CEO of Sui Foundation. Sui is a protocol, L1 protocol that was built from 5 people that they just jumped from the boat of DM in Facebook. So all of them, they were like former deep tech folks that they worked on the DM protocol that didn't go very well. So that was a great experience. In the Silicon Valley, they say if you haven't, go bankrupt in the 3-4 projects, you don't have the experience to move things. So George Danezis, Kostas Halkias, which are also 2 Greeks like myself. So sorry for my Greek English that you will hear. It might sound to you a bit, sounds Greek to me. They joined forces with Evan Chang, that he's the CEO of the Mission Labs, which is the firm that was set up at Palo Alto to build the Sui protocol, together with Adenigi and Sam Blackshire. Why it's important to mention these folks? Because they are all, deep dived into technology. So it's a technology first. So it's all about technology. The second is that all of them, they're very big believers that the stack, the blockchain stack, as it was born, especially the one of permissionless and smart contract environment, is all wrong. So I would say that. That's why they built a whole new idea of the L1 protocols, that they're trying to solve the problems bottom up, which means that things like cost of transactions, interoperability, scalability, they were all revisited from scratch. And the idea is to build a blockchain that actually is not relevant to the, let's say, a few hundreds of thousands of people that they happen to know about blockchain, but because they think that blockchain can be relevant to the whole 8 billion people we are on Earth. That's why we're here as also as a foundation to try to push the idea that, if the blockchain stack does not become relevant to the EBITDAs of every company in the world, it will just die. Or it will be a fantastic idea for those people that will go to Mars. And most of us won't be alive about then, but it's a good idea to think about. So that's about it from Sui. Happy to talk about why we're here.
So usually conversations around me are impromptu, but it was forced by the EAs to push a question. So what I'm going to do is I'll wrap something around which is boiling in my head, not today, but from a long time, around the questions that was sent over to you guys. So it all started with a big blast of NFTs. Supposed to be property rights, like Yatsu advocates, but it ended up being JPEGs moving here and there and the social idea around it. I do agree, especially after listening to Yatsu today, that not essentially we buy everything for a utility. We buy it from a sense of fashion. We buy it from the sense of perception of people. So from that point of view, yeah, obviously, I think 100% people here believe that NFTs are at their bottommost or probably can dip more. But what's your perspective on the futures of NFT 5-year, 10-year? And then Greg, I would love to have your perspective as an infrastructure about this digital property rights, NFTs, and maybe even the stupidest form of NFTs, which is whatever, JPEGs.
Right. So maybe first, the perspective of NFTs as digital property rights is the way in which we can own our unique culture. So when we describe basically general crypto tokens in the past, like Bitcoin pre-ordinals, as sort of a store of value, NFTs are a store of culture. And when you think about the impact that culture has in our society today, it is the most impactful of anything that we do today. Meaning that our perspective in crypto terms would be that culture is the deepest TVL of any economy. So in other words, if you have an economy or nation state that doesn't have culture, then you actually don't have investment. You don't have long-term thinking. Everything is just a utility. So just think about everything that you purchase today. For instance, all of us wear different shoes. Well, why do you choose these shoes? If we just buy the shoes purely for utility, it should all be the same color, and really we should be paying the same price for it. Why do we do that? Because we like Adidas or we like Nike. What is it that we're buying when we buy a Nike or Adidas? 99% of that value is virtual. It's a story. It's a kind of fiction. And we're talking about value. Actually, what is money? Money is a fiction as well. We're basically trading with a currency that doesn't have an underlying utility. I'm not, like I trade someone money for food, but actually, that food, if I get money in exchange, I can't eat the money. And so really, it's again a fiction. Political systems are fiction. So everything, and this is the thing that humans can do that animals cannot. We are bound together by these stories of culture and fiction, these traditions. And any culture that doesn't have these cultures essentially isn't a culture, isn't a society put together. So it's fundamental to everything we think. Now think also in terms of, like in the US, the second largest employment is culture, as in the traditional way we think of it, arts and music, gaming, and so on, at close to, I think, $1 trillion. However, when you think about the sort of the larger one is retail. But what are you buying in retail? You're buying fashion, you're buying clothes. When you choose to be in a certain district, in a certain real estate environment, you're choosing it because of a reputation or a social thing or a culture thing. Again, it's all related to culture. So that's why we are so excited about NFTs. We think these NFTs represent essentially that layer of culture in all of our digital assets. Here's case in point, just quickly. Gaming last year, $100 billion was spent on skins and trinkets inside games like Fortnite and so on, right? That's basically virtual fashion, right? But they don't own any of that. And that's basically, bigger than the gaming industry is already bigger than music and movies combined. So you can kind of see essentially where that goes. And I think, again, when we talk about basically blockchain, what Sui and so on are building, there is a timing of it. For those of you who are old enough to remember the early days of the internet, everyone was building infrastructure first. And the ones who provided the last mile. So, AOL or Time Warner or Juno Online or AT&T, those were the companies that we thought were going to be the biggest companies. Who were the companies that ended up becoming the big ones? The ones who actually delivered culture, the applications. But it's a timing thing, right? And unlike sort of internet with TCP/IP, with blockchain, there's going to be many of them. meaning that it's not a foregone conclusion that there's only going to be one major blockchain that's going to power everything. In fact, it's probably going to be many of them distributed like these sort of nation states. And so that's kind of where it's different. And so what is the thing that will travel across all of those L1, L2s, these digital nation states? It's going to be culture assets. It's going to be NFTs. And they're the ones that are going to be interoperable, moving around chain, which is why we think that's the sort of larger area, not just of value, but also of purpose and utility.
While you're saying this, it reminds me of, I mean, what was Gucci, Moncler, Louis Vuitton when they were launched? And the biggest, I think the biggest validation of the same is whenever they mention their brand, they mention the year of their start, right? So I absolutely agree to that. How does an infrastructure, and of course, he covered up a lot of things about it, but what's Siourounis' take around this? And one thing that I'm also particularly, I mentioned it earlier, fan of is Siourounis' take on Web 2. I mean, Siourounis being a Web 3 stack to a Web 2 world. So please, your comments on the same.
Thank you, Gaurav. And when I hear we are talking about Fortnite, I get goosebumps because I'm trying to get my son to study, and he plays like 8 hours in the game. So the next question is that very relevant to what Yad said. He asked me, Dad, I mean, I want to buy a new skin, and so I have to give every time load the card. So there's no way to get something inside this environment. And then he says, good, Dad, I want to exchange this skin with a friend of mine. And then again, there is a block there. So he has to have like some link in the App Store or in the store of Fortnite in order to allow exchange of skins between his friends. And then he goes to the checkout, and there is a card there that he has to enter. And the card on the back of the card is a utility bill, right? So before we go to what the ad says, there are also some other problems we have to solve. I mean, the utility bill to open an account is like a statement that still comes to your home, and it's like a paper, right? In 2024, we have like almost a statement that is a paper. It could be like an NFT, right? And it's even worse, because when you go and buy and open an account, the bank asks you for the paper statement that you received from the utility company. So it's crazy. So I'm a very big believer also of the NFT world. And actually, Siourounis code is about digital ownership. This is why it was designed. It is designed to bring digital ownership to every human being on Earth. And actually, I'm very happy that we have talked about NFTs, because the technology is built actually to manage NFTs. It has this feature of dynamic NFTs and composability as well, which means that you have an NFT. The NFT can be an avatar that you place a game, or an avatar that fits different clothes. But at the same time, this avatar can have attributes which can be the weapon it has, and it can be exchanged. It can be like a power up or something like that. Which means what? Which means that the technology does step aside, side by side with the need, which I very much believe that this is correct. The need, what is the need? The need is for digital ownership. I want to own what is out there. I don't want to be part of an AI engine to tell me what I'm going to do. Because I looked up, for example, the site for Gregorios, and then you have get the advertisements about people's hotels. I want these websites I'm building out there. So that's the technology stack that we are building. We're building a stack that actually can give people rights to their own stories and to culture back, which means digital ownership to its great extent.
I just want to add one thing around what happens when you have digital ownership and why this will have multiplied network effects. So when you have physical ownership, for instance, you actually have people able to build new experiences on top of it, and they actually get more utility and value to the actual item itself. So the fact that we can own cars and we have ownership in a decentralized manner of cars is why you have people offering tire services or driver services or Uber or Lyft or like radio service, music development or like baby seats. And so now when you buy a car, you're not buying a car just to go from point A to point B. You have thousands of businesses and enterprises that have been built on top of the fact that you own a car and they're offering value for that car, right? And this will happen exactly the same with NFTs. We see some of that already. If Fortnite skins were NFTs, what would happen is someone else is going to open up a different game and they could call it Fortnite Fashion Week. And basically anyone can just literally move their skins across and create a new economy out of all of that. And you create multiple experiences. Well, with the bridge or different chain or whatever that may, or same chain, right? And I think, when you think about, funny JPEGs, when you own a Bored Ape, on one hand, it's a funny JPEG. On the other hand, you own the intellectual property rights of the Bored Ape that's in there. That means that's why you have, for instance, coffee shops or burger joints or water or tequila or, different games that are being built because they can now tap the audience of people who own a Bored Ape. So imagine in the physical world, if you were able to target every person who owned a Ferrari openly, or every person who owned a Rolex watch, as a hypothetical example, how much money would you normally pay to reach that customer? But now you can reach them directly and create value jointly. And instead of paying a marketing agent to try to reach them, which you don't know is going to work, or maybe run a fancy event, you can actually literally give them an incentive. You own a real Rolex, come here, I'll give you 10% discount, or I give you a special experience. How do you do that in Web 2? You can't, except you have to trust a third party to do it. In Web 3, you're absolutely certified around this type of sort of community and culture membership.
Just to add something, if I may, on the Web 2 call, there are also people that say, oh, you are not, Web 3 savvy, so you shouldn't talk about that. But, if you think about it, what is Web 3 and Web 2? I mean, there are two different, expressions of technology on things that we want to do, right? We want to push forward. So if, we cannot solve a problem of a company that is operating in the Web 2 world, probably it's going to be very tough to tap on their, end users. And the end user, I mean, it sometimes doesn't care, it's if on the back it runs, a stack, a tech stack that is blockchain or some other thing. What it wants to do is it wants to get things going, and that's the important thing. So how we can get things going? By providing the right technology to build the right use cases. So why Sui is relevant to what Yat said as well, because the technology is built in a way it uses this new feature of object-oriented approach, where actually what you store on chain. It's not like some chain that you store a number and then you have to have like another 32 CRMs on the back to tell me that the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is actually a cat, or 6, 7, 5 it's my car NFT or something like that. Object orientation and the design is as such that you can store actually on chain what the object is about, and what it's about. So you can call it, it's faster, it's safe, and also you can store everything on chain that has to do with the object itself. You don't have to have all this background CRMs in the Web 2 world. So that makes a huge difference on how things have been designed until now. And the Web 2 world, as I said, we have to find those use cases that appeal to blockchain. Blockchain is not the solution for everything, and not all blockchains are, one shoe fits all.
So this is TDeFi Startup House, right? Almost 70% of the crowd is a startup, or so the only exceptions we made above VIPs were good startups, right? What is the best way for these startups to look at getting something from Animoca and Sui? What can they show? Number one, of course, how can they connect? What can they show, which is of your interest, of course? And then what is the future?
So there's a few ways to approach the Animoca ecosystem. One of the most obvious ones is obviously you should try to contact us. Unfortunately, because there's been a lot of demand, and especially in the bear market, a lot of people want to talk to us for all sorts of reasons, which is great. We've been basically sort of challenged in terms of staffing and so on. But, again, like every entrepreneur, it's startup hustle, it's talking to people, it's going to events. And we have different divisions. For instance, we have the venture team that looks at venture funding. We have the group, we have partnership teams. I would say that if you contact me, I can direct you to people. So that's one approach. But one of the things that I wanted to share, which isn't quite fleshed out, but is to use the community as a way to enter our network state, as it were. And that's through the Mochaverse. And we're in the early stages. So I'll give you an example of what happens in Mochaverse. If you want to, for instance, have an impact in the ApeCoin ecosystem, which is a $1 billion DAO, you can actually now do that by owning basically a Mochaverse NFT. It's another example of that utility. And you can basically participate in that network of that community, which is the one that we as Animoca pay more attention to because it's within the ecosystem that we're building that's trying to connect all of our portfolio companies, or 400 plus, because we're not going to have portfolio managers scaling up in the same way, which means in the same way that if you have a big impact in terms of network effects on Ethereum, you become a voice in Ethereum or a voice of any kind of blockchain that you're doing. The same can actually happen with the Mochaverse. So if you have a voice in the Mochaverse, you actually have a voice in the Animoca ecosystem that can elevate itself above. And why do we did and you can use you can also have governance and things like ApeCoin and other type of token ecosystems. But why did we do that? Because we needed to find a way in which we can basically elevate our governance and our community interaction that wouldn't that couldn't scale in a traditional sense. Think about portfolio companies today. How do you even get in front of the venture team? Well, someone who knows someone, or there's a recommendation, or there's someone else that comes in. And that's okay when you have only a set number of deals. But when you have thousands of deal flow coming through, it's difficult, right? So that's one way to crowdsource into that. And you see this, by the way, for all network effects that you're building in a token economy, right? So if you want to reach into us, there are the direct ways, if you happen to know someone, interact with someone, but there's also the demonstration, basically by interacting in the ecosystem. For instance, if you wanted to participate in the Sandbox ecosystem, if you wanted to get a grant from Sandbox, well, are you just going to go there and say, I want a grant? Or do you want to show that you're a member of that community by owning a land or having tokens and actually interacting in that space and you're a community member? You're much more likely to get a voice. Or if you want to get interaction from the ApeCon community or the Bored Apes community, well, what do you have to do? You probably have to show that you're a member. Maybe you have to own an ape, or maybe you have to know people in that space, which is, by the way, how it works in the real world, right? You don't show up into a country and just say, I want to do stuff. You want to show that you're investing, that you're serious, that you're actually invested in that space. And so I think in the future, not just through NFTs or token infrastructure, you have to show you're a member. And I think the same is true for L1, L2s. If you're a community member in Sui or in Polygon or in other ecosystems, you're going to have a bigger voice if you're a participant in this. And so for us, that's the Mochaverse. So I would say, again, if you can't reach out to us directly, even if you do, basically being a member of Mochaverse is to become an indirect member of the Animoca ecosystem and to say, I'm here, I'm serious. And I think every token ecosystem in the world actually functions in this manner.
Greg?
Sure. Thank you for the floor. My comment here is the following. We are ourselves startups. So the first thing we're trying to solve is very basic problems. And so from the point of view of Sui, what we're sitting and thinking is, and my advice is that, lots of people that we talk and projects have exactly the same problems. Problem number one, I know what I have to do, but I don't know what I have to do. What I mean by that, 9 out of 10 projects, they don't have a go-to-market strategy. They cannot describe their value proposition, and at the same time, they don't have the right call in the market. You need to understand if what they have built is relevant. So when you start with an idea, it's fantastic. And that's what moves the world and pushes the frontier. But at the same time, you have to think if this is relevant to the market. If it's not relevant, then it doesn't mean that you have to do something, or you have to scrap the project. Yes, you have to do that and do something else. It doesn't mean that you have to go home. It's just a challenge. But at the end of the day, we have to solve real world problems because this is what was going to get us in the next level. And so what we do is exactly that. So we're trying to solve these problems. So we help a lot with our ecosystem, firms to understand what the value proposition is, how to go to market, and when they are there, how they can adapt and onboard the next 1 billion users, which is a new technology that we just launched, which is a global innovation. It's called ZK Login, and actually you can just onboard your clients with their email, nothing else, just the email. If you don't have an email, the coins are going to be there until the email with the name that or the email that you put is created. But that's a number that we have anticipated. Future. The future is not going to be the same. I'm sorry to say that, but the next upward market trend, it's going to happen, right? Markets go up and down, but it's going to be very different. So what I would caution everybody is to build applications, ideas, anything that dictates regulation. Why? Because the world is not the same like 10 years ago. Now, blockchain has become relevant to my grandmother. When blockchain becomes relevant to my grandmother, the regulator is coming after me big time. So any project that's out there and is building on the DeFi, on end user applications, on gaming, and they have not consulted their regulator browser, then they should do that. Because once, as I said, blockchain becomes relevant to my grandmother, then every project is subject to regulation. And I'm saying that why? Not because we are afraid of regulation. On the contrary, we love it. But right now, it's a gray region that nobody knows what to do. So SUI and all blockchain industry needs clarity about regulation. That's the whole point. We need clarity because the next wave, which is going to come, it's going to be a lot tougher to survive if you don't have agility on that respect.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yad. Thank you, Greg. I'm sure everybody got the message. Just don't try to hog upon the peers that you know from these companies. There are better ways to prove yourself. We'll end up with this. The conversation has been interesting. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much, Yad.
Honor. Thank you.